That's awesome. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. By all means, tell us where you are in the world. We love to hear and see the global audience we often reach with these LinkedIn live shows. Please put that information in the chat. I'm Catherine Mattice, founder and CEO of Civility Partners, and we are going to talk about some cool stuff today. I have Karin Hurt with me from Let's Grow Leaders. And as you can see behind her, she's written a book with David Dye. So Hurt and Dye have written a book called Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. Anyway, hi, Karin. Thanks for joining me.
Catherine, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this stuff's my jam for sure. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this path of looking at powerful phrases, because that is so, specific and niche, I think.
Yeah. So I run a company called Let's Grow Leaders, which is a global training organization for practical tools and techniques for human-centered leaders. And so my husband and I run it together. We've been at this for 11 years. Prior to that, I was at Verizon for 2 decades. So I was in HR for a decade, and I did everything from merger integration to organizational development to leading large training teams. And then I led a variety of field assignments. So at a 2,200 person sales team, a 10,000 person customer service organization. I say that, yeah, because I just say that like I've seen it all, a lot of conflict.
Yeah, that all just rolled off your tongue. I'm like, okay, I haven't managed that many people, but whatever.
So, I'm really wanting to help people de-stress their workday to get results and stay a decent human being. And it's interesting. So we really do work across a variety of industries all over the world. And we are really seeing the same patterns. And one of the things that we were really noticing is that conflict seems to be getting worse since the pandemic. And so when our publisher HarperCollins called and they said, hey, do you want to write this book on workplace conflict? We think there needs to be a new one about this new breed of conflict. And we just got out of our meeting. We thought, who are the right people to write this? The same people who wrote Courageous Cultures. Because this is it's the other side of that. It's right. Yes, executives can create psychological safety and really involve people. And all that's so important. And you also need to be able to equip people to speak up and advocate for themselves. So we got really curious about, is conflict actually getting worse? We all think it is. The publisher thinks it is. We think it is. But is it? And so we did a world workplace conflict and collaboration survey. It was 5,000 people in 46 countries, all 50 of the United States, to ask a question, is it getting worse or not? And over the last couple of years. And then we asked people, and it was 70% said, yes, it's either the same or more or significantly more than it was before.
Yeah.
But the other thing we said is, think about a significant workplace conflict that you have had in the past. And what is your advice to yourself if you were faced with this workplace conflict again? And that's, I thought, where the real interesting conversation was coming up. 55% said, I wish I would stay calmer. Right. I just, I wish I could have chilled down and approached the conversation in a more rational way. And then 21% said, I wish I could have talked about it sooner. So then we're like, well, why are people not staying calm? And why are they not talking about it sooner? They need skills. They need practical tools and ways to do this. And so often people will come to us and say, just give me the words. Just tell me what to say. Right. And, you can't just tell people what to say. But you can give them some ways to think about these conflicts and some conversation starters. And so that's really why we wrote this book.
Okay. That's awesome. I have so many questions. Is the, I know there's the book like Life Scripts that's essentially a dictionary or encyclopedia of like, here's the scenario, here's how you could phrase all of that. There's books like Tung Fu. That's an oldie but a goodie. Is your book similar to those types of books where you're kind of giving some scenarios and like, here are some options? Is it more about the self-awareness and, you know, your own, I don't know. I'm just like, tell me a little bit more about how the book plays out.
Yes, it is both of those
All of
things.
that. Okay.
Because, you know, I didn't want it to just be like, here's the thing, here's the phrase, you know,
Right.
because I wanted it to be grounded in the research. So we really did ground it in the research. And then we came up with, you know, what we really were seeing as 4 dimensions of constructive conflict. And so just quickly, those are, you know, connected. Do we see each other, and are we connected as human beings? That's before the conflict even starts half the time, right? It's building those relationships. And then if we are having a difficult conversation, are we stopping to connect at a human level? Because that will help to de-escalate the conversation. And in all of this, when we say conflict is not necessarily bad. Conflict just means that we have a difference of opinion here that we need to talk through. And in many cases, the most high-performing teams have conflict, right? Because they are caring passionately and they're doing important work and they're gonna disagree and they're not scared to disagree.
Right.
So connection is one. Then clarity. Do we have a shared understanding of what success looks like? And because so much conflict comes from an expectation violation.
Right.
And that's part of where we're seeing this new breed of conflict come in, because expectations have shifted so much over the last couple of years on both ends, right? And then curiosity. Are we showing up really interested in other people's perspectives? It's really hard to be furious and curious at the same time. So curiosity.
Yeah. Be curious and furious at this. I'm writing that down. You can see I'm taking a ton of notes. Okay.
And then commitment, you know, because a lot of the reasons conflicts don't resolve is because we don't actually put a stake in the ground and say, so what are we going to do next? And so we really ground the book in those 4 elements, why those elements matter. And then from there, give you what we call the greatest of all time, 12 greatest of all time powerful phrases. So 12, 3 for each of those that you can use in any conflict situation. Okay. So if you just start there, right? You don't even get through a quarter of the book, you are already going to be having some really practical ways to do this. And then from there, we do get more tactical. And we have a couple of different sections. One is all about difficult people. So, you know, passive aggressive coworkers, bullies, you know, the people who are acting badly, and how do you take more power in those situations? What if that person is your boss? We have a section on that. And then we have a section on difficult scenarios that really aren't anybody's fault, but it's creating conflict. And, you know, matrix organizations. Okay, that it's a little more tricky to make decisions fast in a matrix organization. So how do you increase collaboration? You know, what do you do in a remote and hybrid team when your team is in conflict and you've never even met each other? And, you know, so we take some of those more nuanced situations, including what do you deal with, you know, dealing with difficult customers, right? And what if the customer is always right? Is not necessarily true. And so
I feel like these days that's been pulled back a little. Okay. So sorry. The 4 things are connection, clarity, curiosity, and collaboration.
Commitment.
Oh, commitment. Okay.
Yes. All of that leads to collaboration. Yeah.
Commitment. Okay.
Daisy and Dwight, we're glad that you're here. If you've got any questions, we would love to answer them as we go along here. Or if you've got examples of, you know, advice to your former self, if you were faced with a conflict again, we'd love to get a conversation going in the chat here.
Yes, by all means, please, please, please. So, sorry, I think I kind of interrupted you, but you're saying that basically there's different chapters that have different kind of like your boss or a customer, or there's different kind of scenarios where you might, okay, I love this. So are you doing this training for organizations where you're going in and using the concepts from your book for a training program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we run long-term leadership development programs. We do keynote speaking. We're going to be at ATD speaking on this topic out in May. And we have several different angles with it. You know, so some, you know, how do you deal with difficult people? How do you deal with challenging conversations? But we also talk a lot about habits of collaboration. And I didn't even know you were going to ask this question, but we are super excited about these. It's our synergy stack cards. Okay. And it takes each one of those 4 dimensions of effective collaboration, and it talks about what are the habits that you can do to really get better at that. And we have like 37 different ways that we use these cards with teams, whether you're an intact team or whether you're trying to go back and do increase collaboration with individuals on your teams. And we've been having a lot of fun and success where teams are like, wow, yeah, really helps me go from, yeah, we should collaborate, we should be better team players, to I'm going to do these 3 things consistently, and I'm going to commit to doing these 3 things. And not all 48, we're just going to pick a couple we're going to work on. And it's amazing how quickly they can just, in a very short period of time, can take a team to the next level. And mostly it's reducing the anxiety and the stress, because we already have so much of that now, right? You don't want to feel that when you're at work.
Yeah. We do a bystander to upstander training, we call it, which probably has some similar concepts. I'm definitely going to get your book and learn more about what you're talking about. But yeah, a big chunk of that training is around courage, because if you don't have the courage, to speak up when you see a microaggression, for example, all the way up to bullying, and we don't, because organizations have made it clear they don't want you to speak out, right? Cog in the wheel is a little bit better position to be in rather than making waves. They've maybe seen it not go so well for other people. Maybe they're sort of conflict avoidant and that's part of their deal, or it's scary, or it's their boss. I mean, there's a variety of reasons it takes courage, that we don't all just go around with the ease of, could you not say that anymore, or whatever it is. And so, yeah, we talk quite a bit about courage. So I like your idea around habits, the more you make a habit out of these things, the easier it is to happen in real time and we talk about that too, like having a couple phrases in your back pocket so that you can just easily recite that phrase.
Yeah, Catherine, I am so curious, because we have a chapter on bullying and you are a bullying expert.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm really curious about, some of your powerful phrases when it comes to what do you do if you are the one dealing with a bully? What are just a couple of things that you would recommend?
Yeah. So, and side note, I wrote down a note to myself to reach out, because I'm actually rewriting back off my book that's 15 years old. I'm bringing it up so I was thinking she's got to write a review for it. Anyway, so I would love to read your book as part of that too. Anyway, one thing is to think about or recognize that with people who bully, that they're not psychopaths who, are excited to make you cry every day. And it certainly feels that way when you're at the receiving end, because those of us who are emotionally intelligent are like, how do you not see the kind of drama and trauma you're creating for me or the people around you? So I understand that conclusion. However, recognizing that these people are really just lacking a lot of social and emotional intelligence, and they're also very focused on results. So those are the two reasons. That recipe is what causes people to engage in bullying. So you can lean into their kind soul that's in there somewhere to say things like, I know your intention isn't to embarrass me, but when you call out mistakes in front of the team, it does embarrass me. Could we talk about it? Or another one is to sometimes just pushing back. You get a nasty email and you respond by saying, I'm not going to respond to an email like this. Please rewrite it and send it back. And just the key is constant boundaries. And it can be exhausting, but it's less exhausting than getting PTSD and having to quit because it's been, 5 years of psychological abuse. So those are some of the tips.
That's really good and very consistent with what we have. So I'm glad. We did a bunch of interviews too. And one of the things that I thought was a great best practice was one guy said, this is what it's like to be me in this situation.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that good?
Yeah. Yep. We also talked too about the fact that, when we're doing the upstander training that, obviously if you're not at the receiving end, but you witness something, we would love for you to speak up too. And it doesn't, I think sometimes speaking up or being an upstander, it's like people envision, don't do that. You're a horrible person, like really getting in there. And that's not what it has to be. It can be subtle. And even if you're witnessing something that's not okay, just to walk by and like make your presence known to shift the vibe, or even going up and standing next to the person at the receiving end and just kind of making your your side known, you know, I'm on their side, you need to calm down. So it doesn't have to be this like real overt, like, stop it, you know, and if that's what you're envisioning, then yeah, that feels very scary. But I remember doing a training. It was one of the first times I'd done a bystander training, which I've been doing for 15 years now. And she's like, you know, I might just go, I see things in the kitchen sometimes. I might just go in and look in the fridge and just kind of pretend that my lunch is in there, you know, and like that way, even if I don't feel courage to say something, I can influence maybe in some way. And so I think that's a powerful story, you know?
Yes, it is. So Daisy is asking a question in the comments here.
Here, let me put it up for everyone. Okay. Hold on. Choosing words or phrases in an email when dealing with difficult people, is it inappropriate or triggering to say that this has been brought to your attention?
So choosing the words or phrases in the email. So somebody has emailed you and now you've got to come back and say something. I think, Daisy, that you are really, and Catherine, I want you to answer this too, but I think that you're really right to be thinking about what are our triggering words, right? So, nobody wants to be told that they're emotional. Nobody wants to be told that they are, name anything, right? Passive aggressive, any of the things that we might be interpreting it. So what I always try to say, what is the behavior that I am seeing that is causing me to interpret this? And then you are having the conversation about the behavior as opposed to the label of the behavior, because the truth is, and then show up really curious about what's going on. This is where the curiosity really matters. Like, I'm curious what's going on here. So, when you say this has been brought to my attention, now this is why I say, Catherine, you should weigh in too, because that seems like that's like bystander, right? So I'm assuming in this question, you didn't notice the issue firsthand. And so one of the most important things we really encourage people to do is to try to notice it firsthand, right? So if your team is coming to you and saying, this person's always doing these behaviors, how can you put yourself in a position to see it so that you can't say, everybody is saying this? You can say, hey, I noticed that in this meeting, when someone said this thing, you cut them off, you did and then describe the behavior. The way I like to think about, is it a behavior, is imagine, don't actually do this, but imagine you took out your phone and recorded what was happening and then played it back. What is it that you're seeing or hearing? That's what you want to have the conversation about. And then, start with a connection. Hey, I really care about you, this project, this team, our work together. And I noticed this thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that looks from your perspective. Are you seeing it too? So.
Yeah, totally brought to my attention sounds passive aggressive and hearsay. I love that you said hearsay, because I put why into things too. Thank you for that. And I think we're very much on the same page. We have a Dealing with Difficult People webinar, and we talk about the mindfulness on your end. And I think that it's so easy to, you're this person, or you're a problem, you're the bully, or whatever, you're the high conflict person. But really a big part of this is the self-awareness that you have, what triggers for you and why. And we talk about an exercise of, like, if you have a person you're working with that's triggering, or you're labeling as a difficult person, that after you interact with them, to go back to your office and kind of journal what happened in that meeting and what was I triggered by? When did my emotions start to feel heightened? When did my heart start beating faster? And then you can start to figure out your triggers when you interact with that person, because it's probably not just the person's presence, it's something they say or do that's a pattern. And then you can figure out, what is that pattern and how can I address it? So the only thing you can change is yourself and how you react to things, right? So Dwight's got a question here. Let's put this up. I like the idea of not freezing people in time and assuming that the individual causing the conflict is automatically bad. There may be other issues and circumstances affecting the situation. It's good to look beyond the issue and resolve the matter. However, if it's constant, at what point will it appear that we may be minimizing the conduct?
Yeah. So thank you, Dwight. And this is a really important question, because when you're having a conversation about something that is a pattern, I think it's so important. We call it the art of escalating this. So ART stands for it. So the first time you're noticing something that's not a behavior that is causing conflict, or so let's say this, like I noticed that you were constantly interrupting your coworkers in our Zoom meetings. Okay, so first time you have a conversation, that you're talking about the action. Hey, I've noticed that you interrupted Dwight in our staff meeting. I'm curious, like, what's going on? Oh, you know what? I was just so excited and fired up. I didn't really need to. Dwight's a wonderful guy. I'd say, so you may have that conversation and it ends. You solved it. But now comes back, and this time, not only he interrupts Dwight, but he also interrupts Sarah and Rachel too. Okay. So now instead of saying, hey, I noticed you interrupted Dwight, and I noticed you interrupted Sarah, and I noticed you, now you're saying, hey, we talked about this before. And he's like, yeah, I didn't. I'm excited. Yeah, I don't want to talk about those specific instances. What I actually want to talk about is the pattern.
Yep.
I'm curious what's going on here for you. Like, why do you think this keeps happening? You said you were going to fix it and you didn't. So now, so they say, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to definitely, what do you think you do? They come up with an action plan. You support it. Great. Move on. Happens again. The next time is trust. So, yeah, but I know, I didn't mean to, but this time, and I was really late. I hear you. The thing is, we've got to be able to talk about these conversations. And you said you were going to do something and you didn't. And then we talked about it again and your pattern. So what is going on? And this is where you don't get mad, you get sad. And really have the conversation. And that's what's really interesting, that you can really often get into a deeper, what's really going on. Maybe it's not a good job fit for them. Maybe what's really going on is there's something really significant going on in their life. But to get to that trust question sooner and not let that linger for a year of frustration.
Yep. And something I know about people who bully anyway, and I think some of even this other type of conduct around, the lower things or less harmful things like interrupting, which is very harmful if allowed to go on. But recognizing that often people, to try to think about the motivation so that you can go into a conversation like what you're describing in the right headspace. And again, not, gosh, they always interrupt, they suck. I wonder if they've felt like they're never heard and growing up, maybe. And so like really going in with some ideas around how can I empathize with them so that it's not me just being annoyed at this pattern of behavior I see. And I do that with my coaching clients a lot of times. They're people who bully, the way they think is like, you're obviously lazy or incompetent, and that's why you're doing that. So versus normal managers are like, are they willing or able? What's happening? And so to help them move away from just diagnosing problems as something wrong with them, they're lazy or incompetent, we go through I do a lot of that with my coaching clients of like, okay, well, so they didn't speak up in a meeting or they made this mistake. Why do you think they did that? And we brainstorm tons of reasons, and we'll never know the real reason when we do an exercise like that. But it just helps like to empathize that it's not just because they're lazy or incompetent. You're aware that they're going through a divorce. Maybe it was that. Or, oh, you yelled at them in front of everyone. Maybe it was that, and like it's not just that they're horrible. So thank you, Dwight, for your question. So can you give us, we're almost at time here. This went by fast. That was like the fastest half hour of my entire life. Actually, I saw a meme this morning that was like, how come the time between dropping my kid off at school and the end of the day is, feels like 19 minutes. And then from the time I pick them up to the time I go to bed, it feels like 25 hours, 9 days. Anyway, give us some couple kind of final tips, and we do have a couple more a little bit more time for questions. If anybody has anything else, please share it. But yeah, Karin, give us some, like, if we're going to walk away with some big nugget today, what should it be?
The first thing I would say is, if you are reluctant to have the conversation, I would say connect to why does your conversation matter? Like, what's at stake if you stay silent? for you, for the work that you're doing, for the relationship. And I'll just tell you this quick story. The other day, I was at a client. I was doing. Sometimes I go on site, and people can come in and do office hours and coaching and stuff. And this guy comes in, and he was fired up. I mean, he was fired up, and he's like, "Karin, I just got an email from David. That's my husband, right? Co-author." And it has on the signature as this book, Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. Do you have that book with you? Because I need it right now. I was laughing because the book is available for pre-order. And I'm like, no, it's not out, but what's going on? What's your conflict? How can I help? I know I wrote the book. I know what the phrases are I can help you with. And he proceeded to say, like, I have been exhausted for like months. Like I can't, I'm losing sleep. I'm not gonna. And we talked through it. And I said, you do understand that she wants the exact same thing as you. And I said, what do you want? And I said, I know her very well. She wants that exact same thing too. So that's where we got to start. What does success look like? Clarity, right?
Yeah.
And now you got to go get connected and curious. What does this look like from her perspective? So I gave him some goats. I gave him some clarity goats. What does a successful outcome do for you? Some curiosity goats. How does this look from your perspective? How can I be helpful here? And he came back a couple hours later. I mean, it wasn't a couple hours conversation, but that's when I saw him next. And he goes, oh my gosh, why didn't I have that conversation 3 months ago? Which is exactly what the people in our survey said, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. We make up these stories in our mind about how horrible it's going to be. And imagine what's on the other side of having a productive conversation and having the right words to do that well. That's my hope for anyone listening, is that they will try to do this.
Yeah. Get out of the rumination of this is going to go horribly for me. And you can't be curious and furious at the same time, but you also can't be curious and create a plan if you're ruminating.
You cannot.
Right. So you've got to pull yourself out of that. And actually, so one of my other books, Stand Up, Speak Out Against Workplace Bullying, we asked for stories from people who had been bullied and successfully, got out. And success is not, I told HR and that person was fired and my life was great. And, it's lots of trials and tribulations. But the thing that they all had in common in terms of where the story shifts from going downhill to I'm going to be okay is that decision, that very clear clarifying moment in time of like, this is not going to happen anymore. I'm taking my power back. And I think, with conflict, it's a little different it's very different than bullying, but a lot of us, it's hard to find ways to manage this. So the first step is to make that decision that I'm going to be okay in having this conflict. And now I can be thinking about my path forward. So amen to everything you said, Karin. All right. Well, thanks all for being here. When is your book coming out?
So it's available for pre-order now everywhere. So you don't have to wait. You can go ahead and order it. But it comes out May 14th, and it's available in physical format, Kindle format, and also Audible read by us.
How do I get a signed copy?
Just send me an address.
I'm just kidding. Maybe I'll buy it and I'll bring it to ATD. Anyway, thank you.
Catherine, are you going to be at ATD?
I don't think so. Actually, I think it was last year, but I usually, shame on me, go to conferences if I'm speaking, but I don't really go if I'm not. So I don't know. My team just puts it on my calendar and points me in the right direction, but I don't believe so this year.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much, Karin.
Right,
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We'll talk to everyone soon. Thank you.
Thanks.